Hello! Welcome back to my channel.
What's it called now?
No, I'm not gonna talk about that. I went on Instagram and I was going to post about my least and my favorite and least favorite books of 2020, and then Charles was like, you should just make a video. So yeah, I guess I'll start.
Go ahead.
Do you want to do like, I'll do one, you do one?
Yeah.
Okay. So I had four, like all-time, not all-time, but like four favorites of 2020 that I really, really enjoyed. I don't know the exact number of books that I read in 2020. I tried to like gather all of them up, but I honestly cannot remember this year. Like I don't remember when it began, or last year now. I don't remember when it began. It just feels like one long blur. So I think though, I read approximately between 20 and 24 books. I just don't, it kind of gets a little foggy. But anyways, so I picked four that I really liked, and we'll just go in order, I guess. My all-time favorite book for 2020, which ended up being now one of my all-time favorite books ever, is The Devil All the Time by Donald Ray Pollock. It's a Netflix original movie, so some of you guys might have seen it. This book was absolutely incredible. It was so good. Basically, it follows a bunch of different people in like the rural Ohio, backwoods of Ohio, and it's this is always my issue talking about books. I'm always so scared I'm going to spoil something, and so I end up saying not enough things.
I was just gonna say, don't say a lot of things.
It follows a bunch of different stories of people in the backwoods of Ohio. It's a Southern Gothic, so it's really dark. It's a really dark book, and there is a lot of like dark elements to this book. So like definitely like trigger warnings for people reading. Like if you want to go read this book, I would say go in knowing that there is a lot of dark material in here, but it is done so well. That sounds horrible, but it is just everything that is written pertains to the story, and it's not just like unnecessary violence or unnecessary darkness just to be dark. It adds to the story and makes the story so much more impactful, if that makes sense. I really don't want to say too much, but if you don't mind really dark books, I would 100% recommend this. It's just so good.
So it's really dark. It's a really dark book.
And if you watch the movie, I definitely recommend reading the book, because the movie was really good, and I think if I had not read the book, I would have 100% loved it. I did like the movie. It was just, it's hard to, there's so many little details in this book that it's hard to just translate into, I think, film. So if you watch the movie, I would definitely suggest reading the book, because there's so much more detail, and it's just that's all I have to say about this book. Favorite book of 2020.
I read 12 books this year, one for every month, which is the most books I've ever read in my entire life. So that's good. My first book, I liked every book that I read this year. Yeah.
I did not feel that way.
Yeah, I tried to pick books that I think I would like. Also, I don't think I'm very picky. But anyway, the first book that I have is Mr. Penumbra's 24-Hour Bookstore by Robin Sloan. And I'm probably just picking this because it's the one that I just finished.
Like this morning, right?
Yes, I finished it this morning. But it was really good. It's about secret society, and it's a book about books. And that's all that you get to know about it. But I thought it was really interesting.
I actually haven't read this one. I've had it on my bookshelf. We share a bookshelf, bookshelves, obviously. And I've had this book since high school. I've had this book for such a long time. So maybe I'll read it this year. How many stars
First
do you
person.
give it?
Narration. I give it 4 stars
Out of 5?
out of 5. Yeah, it's good.
I give 5 out of 5. That wasn't already. And the next book I really enjoyed reading in 2020 is it's a classic that I've never read before. It's A Tree Grows in Brooklyn by Betty Smith. And I love books that make you think, like, later on in life. Like, you finish the book, but you still think of the book later in life. And that is exactly what this book is. So it's been a little bit since I read this, so it's not super fresh in my mind, but it follows this young girl in the turn of the 20th century in Brooklyn, in New York, and it just follows her life and her growing up in New York, and specifically in her apartment and her family. And it's a coming of age story is the simplest way I can put it, but it is so beautifully written and just a really beautiful story. It really pulls you in. It really makes you feel for the characters, and by the end of it, I cried. So, yeah, definitely a classic I think everyone should read at least once in their life, and I really enjoyed it, and I think at some point I definitely will reread this, because I think it's a book that you keep coming back to. I'm gonna give this a 4.5 out of 5 stars.
Okay, my turn. This next book is probably, I'm looking at my stack of books. This is probably my favorite book this year. It's Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. I love this book, even though it's about a pandemic, and we're going through a pandemic right now. Honestly, it made me want to be in a post-apocalyptic world. Yeah, it was just really well written, and I stuck with the characters throughout the whole story. So attentive. I wish there was more information on what happened to the characters. But yeah, I loved it.
How many stars?
It's a good one. 5 out of 5.
All right, next of my favorite books of 2020 was The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt. Now, I have a lot of feelings about this book. It was really good. It's one of my favorite books of 2020. Super good. However, I did not feel that way throughout the entirety of reading it. It's a really big book. Granted, this is like a small version, but it's a really big book. It's another coming of age story. It follows this 13-year-old boy in New York who survives an accident that kills his mother. And so it just follows him, growing up without his mom and just figuring out how to life. And it's really, really interesting. There's so much that goes on in this book. At times it can be really, really slow paced, and you're just kind of, at least for me, I was like, okay, I'm ready to be done with this book, especially because I read this book after A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. They're both coming of age stories about teenagers in New York, just at different times. But it's super great. The ending was beautiful, and it's once you get to the end of it and you finish it, you're just like, wow, that was a really incredible book. So it's definitely worth, I think, the like work that sometimes you may have to put in to get through it. Reading this book at work, I read while working, not read while working, but my job is very low maintenance, so I get to read a lot. When customers will come in, they'll see the book on the table, and I got so many people talking to me about this book, which was really encouraging, especially in the moments where I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to finish this. It was really encouraging to hear how it was almost everybody's favorite book. So definitely a 4.5 out of 5 stars. If you haven't read this, you definitely should. It's also a movie, so I definitely suggest you read the book. The movie was fine.
Nobody likes the movie.
The movie was fine. I think, again, the same thing with the Devil All the Time. There's so much detail and so much things within this book.
There's so much detail.
There's so much. It's hard to translate over film and over movie, especially within a 2-hour period. But I definitely recommend this. It's definitely a book that I think everyone should read at least once in their life. And the ending is just like chef's kisses. It's absolutely beautiful. Oh yeah, it's getting a little.
Is that
Oh, I
all
have
your
one
favorites?
more. I have one more favorite,
What's
and then
your other favorite?
I actually don't have this book with me because I let a friend borrow it. But The Whisper
Put it
Man.
up on the screen right here.
I don't know how to do that.
Oh.
But if I can figure it out, I'll put it up on the screen over Charles's face. It's The Whisper Man by Alex North. This book I read during October, I think. I love this book so much. It was so good. And 2020 was a year that I kind of dove into thrillers. I've never been a big thriller person, even though I love scary movies and that's my favorite kind of movie and all that. But for some reason, I've never been attracted to books like that, which is super weird. So 2020 was the year of like me kind of getting into that. Like I read The Woman in the Window, Behind Her Eyes, which was so great. But The Whisper Man just takes the cake. It is so good. So good. It's a thriller. Obviously, it has to do with a serial killer. Things happen. Again, I don't want to say too much because I'm always so scared of ruining a book for people. And I don't have the synopsis in front of me, and so I don't want to say anything that's not on like the back cover. But definitely 4.5 out of 5 stars. It's so good. That's my favorite books of 2020.
Not even a handful of books that I.
Do you mind?
There wasn't a lot of books that I didn't like this year, but maybe like one or two that I tried reading and then I didn't like it. And one of those was Bloodlusts and Bonnets.
By Emily McGovern.
I didn't really like it because it's. I mean, I know the Emily McGovern who writes this is like a cartoonist and posts her cartoons on Tumblr, right?
Is it Tumblr or Instagram?
On social media.
On social media.
She posts her cartoons on. She posts her comic strips on social media, which I understand that's totally great, but as a full book of it, I couldn't really take it. It literally read like a bunch of small Tumblr posts to me, which I didn't like.
Yeah. Okay, I'll start with the one I actually finished, because the other two I didn't finish because I couldn't. I absolutely could not. So the first is Bent Heavens by Daniel Kraus. I have never had so many negative things to say about a book before until it came to Bent Heavens. This book is just absolutely horrendous. I'm so sorry if it is your favorite book. It just didn't do it for me. We read it in book club, and I don't think anyone liked it in our book club. I think there was a lot of good elements, just wasn't executed right, I think. But basically, it follows Liv Fleming, whose father went missing more than 2 years ago, and right before he had gone missing, he had claimed to have been abducted by aliens. And things happen. I don't want to spoil it. If you guys want me to do like a full-on video about this book, I will, because I have a lot to say about it, and I can't really say it without spoiling it. But there's just a lot of things that go on that it's just kind of all over the place. And granted, I think like writing about aliens are really hard to write about. I'm not a really big sci-fi person either, and so there's just a lot of things that I think just weren't like meshing well for me. I got to the end of I finished this book in one sitting. Got to the end of the book and I was just laughing at how ridiculous it was. I'm sorry if it is your favorite book, but the only reason I finished this was because it was for book club. And honestly, I was intrigued. Like I wanted to know what happened at the end of it because it was so crazy. Not crazy, but it was so ridiculous, and I wanted to get to the end of it because I was like, okay, how is this gonna finish? But it was entertaining in the fact that it was ridiculous, but would not say it was a good book.
Yeah.
Okay, the next book is The Grip of It by Jack Jamek. I did not finish this book. The writing style was so bad for me. I'm so sorry. It just wasn't. It didn't draw me in. It was kind of like annoying to read. Like it just wasn't. It just wasn't well written. I think is the premise of it. It's about a haunted house that that a couple moves into, essentially. But it's just, it wasn't good. And I've had this book on my shelf for such a long time, and I've wanted to read it, and I couldn't finish it. Sorry. Again, sorry if that's your favorite book. Was not for me. My next book that I did not finish, because I couldn't, was Homesick for Another World by Atessa Moshfegh. I'm so sorry if I didn't say that right. So this is a book of short stories. I think I may in the future try to reread this at some point, but this year I just couldn't do it. It's a bunch of short stories about people, and again, I tried to do research on it, and the characters in these stories, I got through I think 3 stories, are just so unlikable, and I'm not sure if that's the point. It probably is. It probably is like, you're not supposed to like these characters. They're not good characters. I don't know, but for me, something really important when I read is I want my characters to be likable. I want to be rooting for somebody. I don't know. I do better with books that I connect to. And all these characters were disgusting, and I didn't like any of them, and it made me uncomfortable. And one of my least favorite feelings in the entire world is secondhand embarrassment and uncomfortability. And so that was what I felt while reading these stories, and I just couldn't sit through it. But I know that Atessa is a really well-known author and has written so many great books, and I want to give this another shot. But for 2020, it was just not, it was not doing it for me. And that is it for the books that we read for 2020.
2021.
2021. Do you have a amount of books you want to read this year? Still 12 or more? Or?
I don't know.
Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in.
You don't have like an outro, do you?
No, I don't have an outro. This is kind of like a little awkward. All right, bye.